Hi, friends. Welcome to America Unhinged. I'm Dr. Mike Spaulding, sitting in for Dr. John Diamond. Today, I am joined by Dr. Deborah Miller. We're going to discuss what is going on in America concerning our schools. This is a critical conversation, one that you won't want to miss. So be sure that you share this show with your friends, inform other people. We have got to take action at the grassroots level if we're going to change the direction of America. Dr. Miller is going to help us with that in this conversation. Stay tuned for that. We'll be right back.
This is an amazing company that has sponsored both of us. And this is a way to have backup communications when the grid goes down.
Well, the situation became problematic, Mike, with the New Orleans, the latest hurricane, because people panic. And this is one thing that I've learned from being associated with the satellite phone store for over a decade. People will call and order 600 phones at a time.
What?
It's like this, Mike. Anytime there is a crisis, people want these. And ladies and gentlemen, they've created such a good deal for Mike's viewers, my viewers, our combined viewers, that this is the only way you're going to be able to communicate.
And that's the other beauty about these phones is they can't track you because it's not talking to a cell tower. It's talking to satellites, orbiting over the equator. So SAT123.com, folks.
IGF. What is IGF? It's the substance that's naturally found in your body. It does things like strengthen your immune system. It promotes lean muscle gain, healthy weight loss, restful sleep, energy, clearer thinking, all of the things that make men again, right? But the older we get, the less our body naturally produces the IGF that's there. Go to keystolife.shop right now and do the research on IGF. The IGF-1 spray that they have there is exclusive to keystolife.shop. Now, this is something that you spray in your mouth 3 times a day. It actually tastes really good too. And this is going to boost the IGF levels in your body. So go to keys2life.shop. You're going to get buy one, get one if you put the product on auto ship. You can cancel anytime that you want to, but I would recommend that you try this product for at least 3 months. I'm on my 3rd month and just now seeing tremendous gains. All right. So go to keys2life.shop. Again, keys2life.shop. Check out the benefits of IGF-1. What does it have to do with deer antler velvet? Go to keys2life.shop. Make sure that you mention Stu Peters when you go to keys2life.shop.
Tired of being canceled? Join us on Brighteon.social. Get social with us, Brighteon.social. Get the latest news. For the best news of the day, go to Natural News, www.naturalnews.com. Sign up for email alerts, World Bombshell Reports. It's information warfare. Get the news you just won't hear anywhere else. And grab a copy of Mike's 9-hour audiobook. It reveals all. How to Survive the Global Reset by Mike Adams.
Hi, friends. Thank you for joining us today for this episode of America Unhinged. Civic involvement is the key to the proper functioning of a republic. Without an informed, engaged, and moral citizenry, a republic cannot stand. America's founding fathers were very clear in their communications to their fellow citizens. They said, as a matter of fact, you are responsible for the fruitfulness, for the prosperity, for the safety, and for the peace of not only your family, but your communities. You are the watchmen and the gatekeepers. We have collectively neglected this great honor and responsibility. What can we do to change the course that America is currently on? Well, our action, whatever plans we put into place, whatever steps we develop, must begin at the grassroots level. And I might suggest to you, friends, that they begin with our local school boards. They begin with our local schools who are teaching the next generation about Americanism, or in reality, they're not teaching our children about that. So here to join me today on American Unhinged is Deborah Miller. Dr. Miller serves as an educational consultant working with Christian schools on mission development and implementation, board training, and teacher development. She's worked in education since 1986, serving as a teacher from grade 5 to postgraduate programs. She's founded and ran a teacher education program, served as a school administrator and regional director for a major Christian association. And you can check out Dr. Miller's work on her website, DeborahJAMiller.com. DeborahJAMiller.com. Deborah, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes, well, been looking forward to this conference. Yeah, that's right. Well, it's early where you are, so I understand that. I understand that. So education, that is your wheelhouse. That is your wheelhouse. And you have stated on more than one occasion, and I applaud you for stating it and continuing to state it as loudly and as clearly and as often as you possibly can, that parents have the right, parents have the responsibility under federal law to see and to comment on the instructional material that our schools are using. So, Deborah, as we begin, why is it that so many parents don't know that, first of all, or they neglect to act on what they do know?
Well, first, I think that there is the mistaken notion that that the school system, the public school system, really has your child's best interests at heart. That they really have your best interests at heart as the parents. And parents think back to their own experience. And again, they were children. So the awareness that they're being indoctrinated isn't there. They're not developmentally able to grasp the fact that probably what, even in their own experience, if you're talking about the millennials who are now having children, they don't remember, or they didn't realize what was happening to them even as they were coming up through a public school system. And so we have the mistaken belief that everything happening at school is for the good of our children. And that's absolutely false. But I think it's ignorance. I think it's unawareness, and we can't afford either one of those anymore, because make no mistake, children are being indoctrinated aggressively and intentionally indoctrinated, and not into ways of thinking that most conservative or traditional parents would think was best for either their child or society at large.
Yes, that is absolutely true. The progressives, and they go by a lot of different names. I've taken in a good many instances anymore just to call them what they are, and that's Luciferians. Now that may put some people off, but listen, the progressives, the Marxists, the leftists, however you want to describe them, they have a death grip on our public education system. And it is a death grip, we could say metaphorically, but I think literally they are choking the life out of our children by removing any sense of American civic duty, any sense of our history, and certainly what preceded that was the removal of Christian values. I remember, Deborah, growing up in school, Bible reading was a daily thing. We started our day with Bible reading, with prayer, with the Pledge of Allegiance, with honoring God. We started. Today, that'll get you fired, won't it?
Yes, absolutely. So we've seen across really all of society this movement from an embracing of Christian and traditional values, because we recognized that whether or not you had a personal faith in God, that to the extent that we embodied sort of the nature and character of God and his goodness, we were a healthy, balanced, adjusted society. Everyone acting in a way that promoted the common good. But we went from celebrating Christian virtues and values to tolerating them, to becoming intolerant, to now becoming actively opposed to.
Yes, and absolutely. And I've described it on several occasions, Deborah, as America simply exhausted our Christian heritage, the capital that we had from our Christian heritage. It was exhausted, it was depleted, and there was nothing that was being invested in our culture from a Christian, a Judeo-Christian perspective. And so now it is bankrupt. And nature abhors a void, right? A vacuum. And so into that has rushed ideas and philosophies and worldviews that are antithetical to America. So school boards, this is a hot topic right now, Deborah, as you
Right.
well know, school boards. Um, in fact, it is such a hot topic that my opinion, and I would like for your input and thoughts and perspective on this, but the recent results of the governor's race in Virginia, I believe, was determined on the basis of really a misstep by McAuliffe and the seizing of that moment by Youngkin, his opponent, and what it hinged on was McAuliffe's comment that parents need to shut up and sit down. Now that's a paraphrase. But he essentially said, "Shut up and sit down. You don't need to be involved. We don't want you involved in determining what your children are learning." Is that a fair assessment, Deborah? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think that single statement that he made, which, by the way, I don't think was isolated. I don't think it was not everybody believes that. That was an isolated statement from a fringe perspective. I 100% do not believe that's true. I think what he said, he actually meant, and I think that statement represents what many, many, many of the professional elite education think, that parents, you're ignoramuses. You bore the children, but that's really your last responsibility. So we, the school, we are the all-knowing. We know what's best for your children. And I agree. When parents heard that, something rose up in them, and I would say it's their God-given right and responsibility to truly be the parent for their child. And parents reacted against that statement, and they reacted to an extent that they were able to persuade others in the public that this was a dangerous perspective that ought not to win the governorship in Virginia. So thank God for that. Thank God for the misstep. And really, though, we can't wait for a misstep to respond. We can't wait for another one of those. I think sometimes I feel like, and I'll wear this too, that sometimes conservatives or traditionals, or I'll even say Christians, we just think that, most people are, they're just going to do the right thing because we think they think like we think, right? That you're going to do, and that's just simply not true. If there was ever a time for the, be wise as serpents, innocent as doves, it is now. We cannot afford to think, well, that was just an isolated case. When we hear something that really scratches our itch again, we'll get up and do something about it. You just read a quote that called upon us to be informed and engaged.
Yes.
Those two words we should write them on our refrigerators. Be informed, be engaged, at a micro level and a macro level. So yes, it swayed the election, and it needs to sway many, many more.
Yes, absolutely. Now, one of the things, and this has nothing whatsoever to do with anybody's perspective on the quote unquote pandemic. It's not a comment on that at all. It is a comment, however, on what the pandemic has been used to hide or obfuscate. This push, this is something, Deborah, I've never seen in my entire life. The aggressiveness at toppling this republic and a Republican form of government, suppressing the voices of citizens that are out of step with the accepted narrative of big government, big media, big tech, big pharma. The censorship that's going on right now in America has been ramped up exponentially from where it was just a few years ago, and it was bad then. I don't see this stopping. I see it continuing to be pushed. The only solution is for parents, is for patriots, is for people who love America and the American life, the Americanism, as Dr. John calls it all the time. People that love this nation and the values on which it was founded. We need to rise up in unison, and we need to speak very, very clearly and forcefully. We will not shut up. We're not going to sit down. You are not going to censor us. We are in charge of you, our elected representatives, and that goes all the way down to the school board. You work for us. You don't work for Washington. You don't work for the state legislature. You work for us. Now, I know part of the problem, Deborah, and I'd like for you to speak to this because you know it well. Part of the problem in our educational system today in America is the almighty dollar. The money flows from the state capitals, from Washington, D.C., but really we need to check that, don't we?
Absolutely. And, the way that the funding structures work, most of the money comes from state and local budgets that get passed, and money is funneled locally and from the state. And then there is a cut of the pie coming from the federal government. But, for the average Joe parent to have an influence on how money flows is difficult, because you have to get in positions where you actually get to help divert that money to various places. I want to go back, though, to say what we can do, though, is run for those school board positions. We have got to, I see it as at least a two-pronged approach. Like you said, we've got to get in, look to see what your children are learning. You have the right to see what their curriculum is. So micro level, every day, find out who is teaching your child. Go on Facebook and look at their profiles. Look and see what they're saying, what they're posting, who they are. Know your children's teachers, and then know what they're learning. So you have a right to examine the curriculum. But by the way, that's not just the textbook. That's every video they show. That's every field trip they take. That's every YouTube song or video or clip that they post. You have the right to examine every form of curriculum that's used to teach your child. And you're going to have to deconstruct that daily. On a macro level, not only go to school board meetings and get your minute or your 2 minutes and say what you can say, run, gather with other like-minded people and figure out who is best to represent and to serve, and run not for one position or two positions, run for all the positions. Every time an opening comes up, put somebody's name in and go out and knock on doors and put up signs and put some money toward it. So, we've got to win some school board seats. So we've got to be actively in the classroom, be the room mother, be the room father, go on the field trips, show up at games, show up at every parent meeting, every PTA meeting, run the PTA. So we need to do it at the school level, at the district level. We've got to insert ourselves again into the decision-making, power brokering places where decisions are made, and that will help funnel money away from these causes that are destructive to our children, destructive, not neutral, destructive to our children, and into programs, policies that will actually serve the common good.
Yes, amen. Yes, I absolutely agree. We're going to touch on that when we come back from the break. We'll be going to a break very, very soon. When we come back from the break, though, I want to touch on that because one of the things that's resulted from this pandemic is that the emotional, mental health of students has plummeted. And I'm not talking about just a little, I'm talking about drastically. And you know those statistics. So we're going to talk about that on the other side of this break. I really appreciate the point that you made, though, Deborah, that we should be doing our own homework in the sense of understanding who is teaching our children. We often talk about what they're being taught, but hey, that is fantastic. Find out who is teaching them. What do these people stand for? And you can find that they do it to us all the time. Conservatives, Christians, patriots, they do that all the time. Well, they're this and they're that. Let's find out who's teaching our children, and then let's put a stop to that. That's brilliant. I really appreciate that. Hey, folks, stay with us. We're going to go to a break, and we'll be right back here on America Unhinged with Dr. Deborah Miller.
This is an amazing company that has sponsored both of us. And this is a way to have backup communications when the grid goes down.
Well, the situation became problematic, Mike, with the New Orleans, the latest hurricane, because people panic. And this is one thing that I've learned from being associated with the satellite phone store for over a decade. People will call and order 600 phones at a time.
What?
It's like this, Mike. Anytime there is a crisis, people want these. And ladies and gentlemen, they've created such a good deal for Mike's viewers, my viewers, our combined viewers, that this is the only way you're going to be able to communicate.
And that's the other beauty about these phones, is they can't track you because it's not talking to a cell tower. It's talking to satellites, orbiting over the equator. So SAT123.com, folks.
Patriots and Patriot businesses, would you like to advertise on Brighteon TV? Contact us at Brighteon TV Advertising at protonmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
IGF. What is IGF? It's the substance that's naturally found in your body. It does things like strengthen your immune system. It promotes lean muscle gain, healthy weight loss, restful sleep, energy, clearer thinking, all of the things that make men men again, right? But the older we get, the less our body naturally produces the IGF that's there. Go to keystolife.shop right now and do the research on IGF. The IGF-1 spray that they have there is exclusive to keystolife.shop. Now, this is something that you spray in your mouth 3 times a day. It actually tastes really good too. And this is going to boost the IGF levels in your body. So go to keys2life.shop. You're going to get buy one, get one if you put the product on auto ship. You can cancel anytime that you want to, but I would recommend that you try this product for at least 3 months. I'm on my 3rd month and just now seeing tremendous gains. All right. So go to keys2life.shop. Again, keys2life.shop. Check out the benefits of IGF-1. What does it have to do with deer antler velvet? Go to keys2life.shop. Make sure that you mention Stu Peters when you go to keys2life.shop.
Join our newest channel on Roku. Go to channel search and enter Brighteon. Brighteon TV on Roku.
Unhinged. I'm Dr. Mike Spaulding. I'm joined today by Dr. Deborah Miller. We've been talking about education in America. We've been talking about it at the grassroots level, but here's something that we must touch on. People are not aware of this generally. They should be, but they're not. And when I say generally, I mean the populace of America. Unless your child's been affected, then of course you're very familiar with what's going on. But one of the results of this, again, quote unquote, pandemic is that the mental health, the adjustment, the social adjustment of our children, what's happening to them, well, it should outrage Americans. Why is it, friends, that we have seen for the last several months, every Saturday all across America, football stadiums, 100,000 strong, no masks, they don't check for vaccinations, but in our schools, they're forcing children to be masked, and in some instances, they're actually illegally vaccinating children. That should outrage every one of us. The statistics are out now, and they're continuing to grow, and they are giving us a very alarming picture of what's happening to our students. Deborah, I know that you have kept track of this. I've heard you speak about this before. This is actually, if it's too strong a word, correct me, please, but this is actually, in my opinion, criminal, what they're doing to our children. The Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University had some very interesting statistics from a recent study. Could you share those with us?
Yes, I mean this is hot off the press as of I think last week, Monday, November 8th, so just a week ago. The work there done by George Barna, you mentioned it, the Cultural Research Center, came out with a study that revealed nearly 1/3 of U.S. millennials, 1/3 identify as gay or transgender. Just let that sink in. Nearly 1/3 of U.S. millennials identify as gay or transgender, and almost half that demographic prefers socialism over capitalism. And this did not happen by accident. This happened under our noses. And so we need to sit back and think about that for a moment, because it is time to become informed and to get engaged, because this statistic should be incredibly alarming.
Yes. So based on what you just said, Deborah, listen, let me give the interpretation of that, friends. Of course, you're all intelligent, or you wouldn't be on this platform, and you wouldn't be a regular viewer of America Unhinged with Dr. John. our school systems are producing gender dysphoria.
Yes.
Intentionally producing gender dysphoria, all wrapped in good little socialism. Is that should be enough right there for us to march on our local schools and say enough, and it's not going to go on any more. Mental health among our students. Now, Deborah, we were chatting briefly during the break. Here in Ohio, where I live, we had something called Social Emotional Learning Initiative shoved down our throat. Many of us stood against that, spoke against it, went to the State House when it was in committee and had an opportunity to give public feedback, spoke against that, pointed out all of the problems with that, and still it was passed. Ohio's not unique. There are other states that did the very same thing. Now, I want to say that the state of Indiana was able to push that back and derail that and not allow it to pass. I hope I spoke correctly in that. But the issue that I would like you to speak to, Deborah, is nobody is talking about what's happening to our children, the emotional well-being of our children, the depression, suicide rates among our children has skyrocketed, as well as substance abuse. Deborah, what are some of those statistics and what should we be doing about that?
Yeah, so the National Institute of Health ran a study between April 2020 and October 2020, and because they were seeing just anecdotally that the social emotional health of children was becoming actually physically dangerous. And they the survey resulted in, or this study, this research resulted in revealing that visits to emergency departments at hospitals for mental health crises increased 24% for 5 to 11-year-olds and 31% for 12 to 17-year-olds. That is an incredibly alarming statistic. So just for your listeners, for your viewers, parents took their children to the emergency department at hospitals to be treated, to be seen for crisis level mental health issues. And so, we're not talking about just going to a counselor. We're talking about taking them to the emergency room to get treatment because they were so concerned for their children. If we want to, just a really recent example of how children are they've lost their minds. What we have done to children is that last week, Reynolds Middle School in Fairview, Oregon, canceled school for 3 weeks. For the next 3 weeks, all in-person classes canceled them to ensure, quote, necessary social emotional supports and that safety protocols could be put in place because the students lack socialization skills for in-person learning. That was a quote from the district headquarters, because the students lack socialization skills for in-person learning. They canceled school, in-person learning for 3 weeks because there were so many fights, violent fights, and alarming behaviors without any way to deal with it. And these kids came back to school and they don't even know how to interact with one another. And that was child abuse. It was child abuse to send healthy kids home at the beginning of this pandemic, to send healthy kids home. And the statistics do not bear out that it was a right choice. Children were not at risk by and large, and yet we sent them home. But I'll go back to something you said. I think that schools, that governments, I'll put it at the feet of the government. You know, we say children are not wards of the state, but every chance the government gets, they enact some new regulation or limitation because they want to break down independent thought and identity. They want to create groupthink so that those statistics we saw out of the Cultural Research Center continue to increase. And that is what it is. They are using public schools as breeding grounds for indoctrination to a way of thinking that will be controllable. I mean, again, it sounds like I'm using hyperbole to make a point, and I don't think I am.
No, you are not. You are not at all, Deborah. That is exactly what's going on. It's the propagandization, the indoctrination, it's brainwashing right in front of our eyes.
Yes.
And you're right. Every opportunity that government takes, whether it's local, state, federal, they will attempt to implement something that undermines or erodes parental rights, the responsibility of parents to rear their children as they see fit. That is under attack today. One of the things that concerns me, and because we've seen this in the last 20 years or more, from Washington, D.C., is that bills that get passed, they're not actually written by our senators or congressmen. They're actually written by special interest groups, lobbyist groups, industries like the pharmaceutical industry. They write legislation. Members of Congress don't have time to read it. They're getting cliff notes at best of what's in it, and even those are disingenuous. They're not accurate. And so things are getting passed. They're being placed into law that many of us don't know about, but I'm afraid they're going to be sprung on us at the opportune time in the government's eyes concerning our children. And this is historically speaking, tyrannical governments have done this repeatedly with our children. I was reading an article earlier today, Deborah, and I don't want to take this too far off, but I think it's applicable. I was reading an article by Dr. Gene Veith, who wrote back in the 90s on the rise of fascism, the marriage of government and corporation and schools and education and indoctrination and all of this. Well, he recently wrote another article updating his work back then that says, listen, it's on steroids today. If you want to understand what's going on, that's what's happening. Our liberties and our freedoms, our Constitution, our way of life as Americans is being destroyed right in front of our eyes. So my point is this is not hyperbole.
Right.
This is not exaggeration. This is happening in real time, friends. Yeah. Real time. And listen, I know, Deborah, you are, I'm not a person that just whines and says, here's what's going on. I'm a person that likes to give solutions. Yeah. I want to tell people what actions should we be taking as a result of what we see happening. We've already laid out a couple of those things. Get involved in your local school boards. Run for those positions. I would also tell you, start attending your city council meetings. Start running for city council. Yes. Start running for mayor. You've got to start someplace because we have to make a difference. We've got to be involved when in places where we can have a voice to turn or direct funds, influence to the places where they need to be. Deborah, I know that's been your whole career. This is your wheelhouse. Yeah. Speaking about education and directing our efforts to the most important specific places. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm going to respond in a way that you might be surprised, but I feel like I feel really, really inspired to tell parents, first and foremost, know your children. Your children go to those schools every single day. Tell your children, raise them up, train them up in the way they should go. And make sure that they understand the basic tenets of the Christian faith or conservative thought and value. Make sure that they understand and take them to church, yes. Take them to Sunday school. You've got to have some kind of a counterbalance against what they're hearing, almost 40 hours a week, and you've got to have some counterbalance for that. You've got to deconstruct every single day what your children are learning, not just in the formal curriculum, but in the informal curriculum. You've probably heard about the New Hampshire freshman football player last week who was suspended for a game for daring to suggest in an off-campus conversation that there were two genders. And he was suspended for a game by the coach because that violated district policy, which enforces a perspective of gender fluidity. And, you're not going to change that district policy overnight. So you've got to go home every day and tell your children, God created us male and female. Genesis, book of Genesis, back to the beginning. We are male and we are female. You said that the government, passes these policies, but there's a lot of influence from just private organizations. And, GLSEN is one of those, the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. And I am concerned with what I see on their website. And so you go there, and I mentioned to you in a previous conversation about their student information form that a teacher can download to use in their classroom that asks those kids, what pronoun do you want to be called in the classroom? What name do you want me to use around your parent? What pronouns do you want me to use around your parents? So the school GLSEN is helping schools and teachers be the advocate. And I don't know if your listeners, your viewers know that, in some states, children as young as 15 can undergo sex reassignment surgery without parental consent. They can get birth control without parent consent as well. But, birth control, that's passé. They can get gender reassignment surgery as young as 15 without a parent knowing. So there is an active indoctrination happening. I was on the GLSEN website today to look at their recommended book lists that public schools, that libraries can look at to populate their libraries with LGBTQ plus friendly material. And I found this wonderful book that they recommend. And of course, that's tongue in cheek. I do not recommend this book. What an innocuous title, When Aiden Became a Brother. Wow, if I were a pregnant mommy, maybe I would think, what a nice book for my child to check out from the school library. Here's the first couple lines. When Aiden was born, everyone thought he was a girl. His parents gave him a pretty name. His room looked like a girl's room, and he wore clothes that other girls liked wearing. After he realized he was a trans boy, Aiden and his parents fixed the parts of life that didn't fit anymore, and he settled happily into his new life. Okay, so, and this is in a list of books that they recommend that elementary schools put in their school libraries. So I just say, parents, every day, go through their book bag. Every day, look at what they're bringing home. Train up your kids to be discerning and to love the Word of God. Get them into their children's Bible, pray with them, listen to Christian music in the car on your way to school. You've got to do everything in your power to help children be firmly planted and grounded in the Word of God and its truths, because nothing else is going to change these statistics, right?
Amen. Thank you very much, Dr. Deborah. I really appreciate you joining me today. Friends, that's all we have time for today on America Unhinged with Dr. John Diamond. I'm Dr. Mike Spaulding, filling in for Dr. John. Friends, stop addressing only the symptoms. We've got to address the origin of the issues that we face. God bless you guys today. See you next time.